Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, in which we're going to show you how MarkLogic helps unlock value from your complex data and enable data agility. My name is Alicia Saya. I'm with the marketing team at MarkLogic, and I'll be moderating today's session. With me today, I have my colleague David from our solutions engineering team, and he's going to show you how to use SQL views in MarkLogic to get the benefits of a semantically enabled multi-model universal repository without needing your users to know SPARQL or complex JavaScript. Now, before we go any further, I want to let you know that your lines are muted, but you can ask a question at any time down there in the Q&A section, and we do have time reserved at the end to answer those questions. The recording will be available after the webinar, so don't worry if you missed anything. I've got just one slide here to give you a little context about MarkLogic and our platform. Anywhere there's a desire to do more with information and do it faster, visionary organizations turn to MarkLogic to solve problems others can't. MarkLogic helps you get more value from your complex data and do it faster by delivering data agility. Now, we define data agility as the ability to quickly and easily make changes to how any information is interpreted and acted on at any scale and for any purpose. We've seen that the old way of working with data is no longer fit for purpose. It's too brittle, it's limited by silos, and it's application-centric, which means lots of point-to-point integrations, ETL-type operations, and time delays. Traditional data management can't accommodate change easily or quickly, nor keep up with the pace of business. Now, we believe the better way is to take a data-centric approach, which massively increases our customers' ability to make better decisions, armed with quality and complete data from a single platform. Our customers want to work with information differently. They want to connect information, create and interpret meaning, and consume data along with everything that's known about it for a variety of purposes across the enterprise. We provide a multi-model data platform packed with capabilities like built-in search, semantic AI, mastering, and security that lets them do just that. Now, today's webinar is focused on the consume aspect of our platform, describing how to access data from a universal financial services repository built on MarkLogic. And I'm going to turn it over to David now to show you how it works.
A key to a universal repository is that it combines data of all kinds, from Word and Excel documents and PDFs to JSON and XML, to data coming from relational systems to semantic triples. Being able to access all this data in an integrated whole is a key aspect. In a universal repository, much of the work in making different data types will have been done on ingest, by parsing and extracting metadata from unstructured and semi-structured documents, and by pulling critical fields from relational data. What will be essential to making the data available to users is providing a multi-model approach to data access, and by using semantic ontologies and other triples to tie information together to enhance queries and provide better responses. So that's what we're going to be looking at here. Much of the data coming into a universal repository will look like this slide. This is a complex XML document. Why it looks like this, this is not always usable to your end users. The majority of your end users need to access the data more like this. If they're using Power BI, Tableau, Python-driven machine learning algorithms, they all need data provided them looking like a grid. With MarkLogic, any data that has been modeled with the Data Hub is immediately available as a SQL view. Also, with the MarkLogic's template-driven extraction, SQL views can be defined on any structured or unstructured data. So we'll show an example of this later on. Once the data is loaded, the firm needs to be able to query it and perform analytics with it. This can be handled by enhancing the repository with semantic ontologies, as can be seen from the example on the screen. So suppose a user wants to find all the records on bond and high yield. In most systems, just entering those terms will only provide a fraction of what's really available on the topic. The reason for that is because content producers don't necessarily think about the data the same way as content users do. So in this case, munis are a kind of a bond. Debt securities are another synonym for a bond. High yield junk and high risk are all different ways of saying the same thing. When you do your query, whether it's a structured query or a free text search, and you just focus on bond and high yield, you'll miss the records indexed against the other terms. MarkLogic integrates structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data with semantic ontologies, which allow it to expand your searches and queries behind the scenes and make it a smart data platform. With MarkLogic, your users don't need to be experts at how your data is categorized and indexed to get value from it. Okay, so MarkLogic has all these powerful data access techniques. It can take data from text, Word documents, Excel, structured data, semi-structured data, and it can turn all your semi-structured and structured data into SQL views. But how do you take the full advantage of the power of MarkLogic? How do you combine semantic ontologies with your SQL data? How do you combine other kinds of free text searching and other techniques with that in a way that's usable by your users without them having to become experts at all this technology? And the way you do that is with MarkLogic's Optic API. So it's a single API that can handle your documents, your rows, your graph information, and it can handle any kind of index and then expose all of that data as a SQL view through ODBC to any application that needs it. So it can take data from the views that already exist, from your triples, from searches you've done, from existing indexes, from SQL commands, and from SPARQL, and all of these different kind of queries can be combined into a single whole. So you can do aggregates and groupings, you can do joins between documents, you can do joins between SQL rows, you can do unions and intersections between different data sets. All the things that you would do in SQL, you can do in Optic. But again, you're not just working with SQL data, you're also working with document data and semantic data. And so how do you construct the queries? The same way as you would in any other approach. You create selects and order bys and joins, and then you output the data when you're done. Okay, so let's get hands-on. So in this system, we actually already have a large amount of data. So there's already 4,000 different documents at different times, customer information, mortgage information, customer to account information, loan document information. But let's talk about how we start to access that. Anytime you use the MarkLogic Data Hub entity services and model entities, anything you model is automatically made available to you as SQL. But in addition to that, we have what's called the template-driven extraction, where you can create templates that describe regularities in your data. And then whenever you register those templates with MarkLogic, that's creating a SQL view of the information. So this is what it looks like. You specify what kind of information does this SQL view apply to, and so you use the MarkLogic idea of a context, a collection, and so this only applies to information that applies to the mortgage collection. And then you come in here and specify what field names. So you have incoming documents, which may be XML or JSON, and you specify what attributes you wish to pull out of those. So account number, which in this case we're calling a string, location, which is a string, loan type, mortgage type, interest rate, which is a decimal in this case, loan to value ratio, which is a decimal, the mortgage amount, which is also a decimal, so an end date, which is a date, how many days late. And so you come through here, and geometry, where you're specifying where the latitude and longitude of where the property is that you own. And so you come through here and specify which columns you're pulling out from the underlying data. And that data is in this case, so we ran through the data harmonization and modeling process in the Data Hub framework. So we've already harmonized possibly multiple data sources, which may have inconsistent names, and harmonized them. So you would be defining this against an already harmonized, but you don't have to. You can just take raw XML, raw JSON, and create these against that. And then you insert this template into MarkLogic, and once you do that, it kicks off what's basically a reindexing event. MarkLogic will go through the entire database and create a SQL view of this, and as soon as it's done, your users can now access this data through our ODBC connection. And so if they're using Tableau or Power BI or Python, all of this is accessible to them. And so we already saw an example. We'll probably at the end also show accessing. We're not going to run this here because we already actually defined this in Data Hub framework, so this would be redundant, but you can do it against different kinds of data that you haven't gone through the data modeling process. So now let's talk about, but we have that SQL view we created, and so the data that coming in, as you'll recall, was just a lot of key value pairs basically. So if we come down here and look at what one of those records look like, the data coming in actually just looks like this. It's just name value pairs in effect stored in a document. This looks like XML. And then, but what we've done is taken this and then through our TDE created a single SQL view of that information, and now we can do all these different kinds of SQL queries against it. And then also, this is a more interesting example. Here we have taken, we're doing a SPARQL query. So let's just run it. And so we're running for this social security number, and this is going against triple data, so that one of our data sources, well, we have multiple SPARQL inputs here. We have a relationship information of who's in household with who, and then we also have a lot of information linking different IDs the customer has. And so then this SPARQL query is taking that and then running this query to give you an idea of all of the accounts that exist for a household. So we start with this person and we say, now let's expand that query with this, this is going against triples that say this social security number is in a household with this social security number. And so we're expanding the query there. And then we're also using our triples that are talking about which accounts are owned by who. So this has a social security number, but they'll have a different account number. That this social security number will own these two different accounts. And then this one here, the spouse of the person, will have these two accounts. So we just give it a single social security number, and then we use our triples relationships to expand that to get what other accounts that same person has, and then what other accounts that person's spouse has. And so, and again, that this is all happening here inside of a SPARQL command. But the assumption here is our end users don't know SPARQL. That the idea is we have these powerful data access techniques, but we want to make them available to our end users who we're assuming in this case only know SQL. So what we do is we take this same query and then we create a view of that. So now this doesn't actually generate anything because it's creating another view. So we created the TDE view. Now we're creating a SQL view of something called mortgage.household accounts. And so again, it was this exact same query, but now you can query that view this way. So this is running the same query as before, but you're running it as SQL. So you're getting now, so this was, in fact, this is the true query, hard to understand, requiring specialized skills. But because you've taken that with MarkLogic TDE, I mean with MarkLogic Optic API, and put a SQL wrapper around it, now your users can access that same information. And it's really important to keep in mind that we're doing a semantic ontology expansion of the information, that we're accessing our SQL, we're doing a SQL query, but we're going to triples and we're traversing the graph and expanding them. And so that becomes really powerful. And then now that you have this SQL view, you can combine that with all your other SQL views. And so now geospatial, we haven't mentioned that yet here, but you know, the properties they're located someplace. And so now this is a query where we're saying, show me everyone within 250 of this geospatial coordinate. And we want to restrict it to mortgages that are of adjustable rate mortgage type. And then we're combining that with our customer information and our mortgage. So these are SQL views that we created, that we modeled customer information as a table. We modeled the mortgage information as a table. And again, those were XML files that came in. And when we did our entity modeling, MarkLogic automatically created SQL views of those. And so we're querying those. And then we can join. So now we're joining the customer information, and we can do the queries of show me loan to value ratio of 80, end date greater than this, and run our results. So here we are. This is true multi-model. We're making everything easily accessible to our end users, but this, we haven't actually projected this as a SQL view yet. We're running searches that combine those. And then the DSL, I'll just run through this quick. This is just a specialized approach where the idea is that we're restricting ourselves to a part of JavaScript that's easy for human beings to understand. So you can take that for what you want, but this is to make it, the developer skill level can be a little bit less. But so we're doing joins on our mortgage table, on our customer information table, and we're combining this with our SPARQL query that we, you know, it's owns. This is going against triples and restricting it to triples that actually have that within it. And so we're pulling all this information out there and then creating, you know, this output at the bottom. And so those are the techniques. So basically the idea is that your end users only need to know SQL. Any program that can pull up, make a connection through ODBC can have the full power of MarkLogic, that they can be combining all of these different data access techniques. They can be combining semantic ontologies, they can be providing SQL and everything else and the geospatial, and then pull it all into one place and access it with only a knowledge of SQL. So what do your users have to do to access the work we've just done? So we ran that, and everything we did as we created when we did the data modeling with Data Hub Framework, that was automatically saved as a SQL query inside of MarkLogic. We used the Optic API to create other SQL views, and they're automatically stored with MarkLogic. And what happens is that if you just set up your MarkLogic ODBC connection, you tell it to go against the data. So in this case, the Data Hub Framework by default uses Data Hub Final. So you point it at that, you go to the appropriate port, you give it the username and password to connect, and now you have the full access to everything that we did. And then you can go to Tableau, Power BI, and Python and run those same queries that we were running in the Query Console inside of MarkLogic from those applications. So what does the end user see? So here we are in Tableau. Never seen MarkLogic, but you tell your users they want to make a connection to MarkLogic, and you give it the password. And there they are. So all of the different things that we created using either the Data Hub framework or the Optic API are now available. And so these are the schema names. So if we come into mortgage, we have 3 subsets. So let's look at like household accounts. That was, as you'll recall, a SPARQL query that we projected out to SQL. So now you have it and you can do what you want to do. And you can pull out your mortgage information and link those if you want. But so I'm not going to get into that here. We actually showed you what the end user experience looks like. But once you have this, all of the functionality of either the Data Hub framework and the Optic API are available to you in SQL form, combining all of the capabilities of MarkLogic, and all your end users need is to be able to handle these SQL schemas.
Thanks, David. That was great. Now, before we move to the Q&A, I wanted to sum up the reasons our customers choose MarkLogic to solve their complex data problems. First, the MarkLogic platform is unique in that it treats data and metadata as a single data resource, regardless of format, type, location, or quantity. Data, including all its metadata, is connected or ingested as is, ready for immediate consumption without the need for normalization, transformation, or simplification. And although we didn't cover it in this demo, our semantic AI technology uses machine learning and knowledge models to synthesize, enrich, extract, and harmonize all types of metadata, which does greatly simplify creating and sharing what the data means. And we store this meaning with the data to enable informed search, contextual applications, grounded data for analytics, rigorous data governance, and transformational data security. Now, the robust set of capabilities of our data platform benefit our customers by enabling a number of things. Now, number one is data agility, and that's the ability to easily make powerful changes to how data is interpreted and acted on by your applications. Ease of connection. We let you integrate existing data sources, repositories, applications, and workflows. We let you deliver information in context to its use case and its intended audience. Finally, data trust, and that's earned via traceable, transparent, repeatable, and auditable results that are understandable by business users. All facts and interpretations are part of the business record. So with MarkLogic, you reduce the effect of data and knowledge silos in your organization with a single data source along with everything that's known about what the data means. And this is all supported with enterprise-grade database capabilities like security, scalability, availability, language support, temporality, interfaces, and a standards-based architecture. Now, if you think these are benefits your organization can take advantage of, we'd love to have a conversation. MarkLogic is being used around the world to support a wide variety of use cases involving complex data. We'd be very interested to hear your use case, and we can have a technical meeting with your team to discuss. And also, if you're a developer and you want to jump right in, we do have free training available through MarkLogic University. Now with that, we've got a few minutes to answer some of your questions live, and if we don't get time to answer them live, we will follow up with you afterwards. So let's open it up. Okay, David, got a few things in here. Let's see. First one, I gather there are two ways to create metadata in MarkLogic, Data Hub and Semaphore. Why two, and how do I decide which I should use?
Yeah, so MarkLogic does come with two approaches, and one is our Data Hub Central, and the other is Semaphore. And so the big difference is the Data Hub Central is really designed to work with structured data, so that if you're getting output from relational or also from XML or JSON, which has a well-defined, key value pairs, so that you understand what your data is, and so you can just explain exactly what's going on to MarkLogic, then it will both generate metadata for you and also it will harmonize. So the Data Hub framework does much more than just generate metadata. It also harmonizes different data sources where you have different, one might say last name and one might say L name, for example. And so the Data Hub will do all that while it generates the metadata. And then Semaphore is really working with less structured data. So you can take PDFs and Word documents, extract facts from it, classify the documents, and so it's generating metadata against any kind of data, so that things that are not appropriate. So you can do it you can use it for the structured data if you like, but it's really focused on taking the less structured data or the completely unstructured data and then generating metadata from that. So they're very different use cases, but they're both really critical if you're building a true data hub.
Okay. It's another one. How do I create the ontologies to get the kind of results you are showing?
So this is a question I come across a lot of times. I talk to customers and they love the benefits of ontology guided search and all the benefits it provides, but they've never seen a triple in their life. And so MarkLogic does do a lot to help you both create triples in general and ontology specifically. And specifically the Semaphore product, our Semaphore add-on comes with a dynamic ontology builder, so that it will go through your documents, extract keywords as a starting point, and then help you turn that into a formal model. And the key part about that is, one problem that users have is they create ontologies, they put it out, and 3 months later it's out of date and the application is no longer works because the business world changes every day and your ontologies have to keep up with it. And Semaphore is really around dynamic ontology creation, where you don't need programmers doing it. You have business subject experts who are maintaining the ontologies, and you don't need new releases or anything. You just, your business users are there working with it, changing it as it goes, but it comes with a full set of tools for creating ontologies.
Okay, cool. It can leverage existing ones that are out there too, right?
Certainly, there's a lot of existing ontologies out there. There are firms that do, there's organizations that put their knowledge of what they do into ontologies, and we can certainly utilize those or use them as a starting point if you want to customize it.
All right. What other kinds of views can you produce with the Optic API?
Yeah, so Optic is really, the point of it is there's a lot of different kinds of data. There's search, there's SQL, there's SPARQL, there's geospatial, and so it is the master around it, the one ring to rule them all kind of thing, that it puts the wrapper around it and allows you to have one query that accesses all of them. And so today we talked about exposing that as SQL, but you don't have to expose it as SQL. If you want to make your data available as files or projected out for programmatic access in real time, the Optic API can certainly provide the background, the infrastructure to make that happen.
Okay. Here's one. You were showing Tableau. which BI tools do you support?
So what we showed, so that Tableau does have MarkLogic listed as a name. We are an officially supported one. And with some other products, that's the case. But we will support anything that will connect to ODBC. So if you're doing Python, any database, Toad or whatever, any database, anything that can access SQL, anything that can access ODBC, we will connect to it and you can access it. It's all ANSI standard SQL, and so any SQL compatible tool will work with us.
Okay. And time for one more question here. How else can you output the data?
Yes, so MarkLogic in general is there's a wide variety of tools. The commonest approach besides SQL is all of MarkLogic functionality is available through APIs. So you can make API calls to us, and so any language that can make like .NET or whatever can access us. We do have pre-built Java connectors, multiple libraries, some which are oriented for batch, some which are oriented to, our Java client is line by line access. And there's a huge number of ways. We have batch approaches for getting data in and out of MarkLogic, what we call the MarkLogic content pump. We interact with NiFi and Kafka, but the biggest one is REST. So anything that understands REST can talk to us.
All right. Well, good. If we didn't have time to get to your questions, we'll follow up with you afterwards, as I mentioned. And I'm going to wrap up for today. David, thanks for a great demo. Thank you all for joining us today. And stay tuned. Watch our emails in our Bright Talk channel to see some of the other demos that'll be coming up showing different aspects of MarkLogic. So thank you.